To make the Ohio star, you're going to need a series of squares. You'll want one 4.5-inch square to go in the center. You will then need four 4 7/8-inch squares. That makes the corners of the block. And you'll also require four 5 1/4-inch squares. That's for the sections that are here. Initially, what you need to do is to take all of the 4 7/8, and I've got 2 red, 2 calico, and these need to be cut in half, corner to corner, making half square triangles. So all the 4 7/8 get cut in half, making half square triangles. The 5 1/4 get cut into 4, making quarter square triangles. So cut all 4 5 1/4 squares in half and in half again, making quarter square triangles. When you've done that, we can get ready to sew the block together. Let's deal with the half square triangles first. So take one of each colour, calico one in my case and a red one, right sides together, and then you are going to sew all the way down the diagonal using a 1/4 inch seam allowance. When you've done that, it will pay you to press the seam open and flat. Don't cut little ears off yet. I find it's much easier to leave the ears on till later on when sewing the design together. So that's the half square triangles. The quarter square triangles need to be laid out, and I had 2 yellow 5 1/4-inch squares, 1 calico 5 1/4-inch squares, and 1 blue 5 1/4-inch squares. So they've all been cut into quarter square triangles. You're going to sew 2 together and 2 together. Put the 2 fabrics right sides together. Now it will pay you to sew them all with in my case, the yellow on the top, and sew down the right hand side of each piece, because if you don't sew down the correct side, they won't fit. When you stitch down the correct side, which in my case is the yellow one, down there, 1/4 inch seam allowance, press the seam open and flat. Let's move those to one side. Here we have the seam pressed open and flat, and do it very gently, finger press preferably. Once you've done the seam, you're going to now put the 2 halves together. Line them up in the middle, and you could use the pin trick. And the pin trick is where you stick a pin through both seams, there and there. Get the seams lined up on the pin. Leave the pin sticking up in the middle and put another pin one side and a further pin on the other side. When you've done that, you can take out the middle pin and just sew. You sew up to the pins, do not sew over pins, remove the pin when you get there across the junction. I must confess that these days what I tend to do is I will line up the middle and then have a small pair of sharp scissors, which I have slightly open. As I sew up to the junction, I will hold the junction firmly, let the presser foot slide onto the fabrics, remove the scissors before you actually go underneath the presser foot, and then complete the seam. Once you've completed the seam like this, it will be now time to press that seam open and flat, as we have here. So you should end up with 4 pieces made of quarter square triangles exactly the same, and 4 half square triangles also with luck exactly the same. So all we have to do now is put them together. Having finished all the blocks, it's now time to lay it out. So that's going to be the center block, your 4.5-inch squares. These half square triangles are going to go on the corners. One there, and another one, and finally that one. And then we can fit the star pieces in. I'm having the blue to the center. I think one of the wonderful things about the patchwork world is you can play. Okay, technically that's an Ohio star, but you could move it round. You could have the calico to the center if you wanted to. It will change the whole appearance. You could turn the corners round, and that's going to give you something very different. You might lose the star effect, but you're going to get a subtly different design. So you can play. I'm having it this way to begin with. Once you've done all the various blocks, it's time to stitch it together. Now, many of you would sew it together probably as 3 rows of 3. I personally prefer to have it done as I'm going to explain. I sew those 2 together and those 2 together and that block, because that seam is quite simple. Then I join those 2 together and put it on the end, and then I will have a row and attach the row to the remainder of the block. Now, when you do come to take the pieces and put them together, I would arrange them so right sides together, line up the raw edges, but I'd sew this block from this end to that end because it's slightly thinner here. The other little trick I often employ is to sew down the edge here, line up the seams at the bottom, take a small pair of sharp pointed scissors. Having got your seams lined up at the bottom, put your little scissors on the ears. The ears are very useful, and hold that seam together as you guide it underneath the machine. Remove the scissors before the needle actually goes through the points of the scissors. That does help. Once you have joined 2 of them together, then I would suggest you cut the ears off. So as soon as you join it together, cut the ears off. And if you press the seams open and flat, you will often find that in the seam there is information where your next seam will go. Because can you see the V there? The base of the V is the top of the points on the right side. Ditto here. Now, this may not be 1/4 of an inch from the edge of the fabric, but at least it means that when you come to join the block, you can do quarter, 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 deviate, and you go exactly through the base of that V shape, here and here. And that will mean you're bang on your points. So I will join those 2 together. I'll join the middle section to one of the side sections, which we have here. I'll join those 2 together, there, and then finally I'll have a row of 3. Remembering you're going to press the seams open and flat, and this gives you clarity of where to stitch through. That's slightly more than 1/4, so I can line up my points, do a bit of deviation, go through the base of that, and with luck I'll have perfect points, because believe you me, there's a whole load of Mrs. Picky Pants in the patchwork world. Once you've joined the entire lot of pieces together, you should end up with, one hopes, the the Ohio star, which looks like this one. So as you can see, the Ohio star, a really traditional block, is not difficult to do. It's just a few half square triangles, HSTs, and some quarter square triangles, QSTs, joined together to make this rather super design.